Dispatches.
He's the man. It's awesome, funny, random, doesn't make any sense, but it's good.
Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. Happy second Saturday. It's the 26th of June 2022 in case you're not watching this live. Welcome everyone. Today we are going to be doing something slightly different. We're not going to have, apologies, got myself twice there. Today is our first interview where we're not talking to an ex-Mormon. We're going to be talking to some ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, JT and Lady Cee. They've appeared previously on the Mormon Stories podcast, episodes 1428 and 1429, and that was awesome. I listened to it recently again this week, and it was amazing. We're not gonna cover what was covered there, because there's 3 or 4 hours of great material that you should all go back and take a look at. John does a great job interviewing them and going through some of their backstory. So we'll meet them in a moment. We'll speak to them and get an idea of where they are. And then we're going to play a little game. We're going to go through some categories and compare Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons and the teachings, etc., and just kind of figure out in what areas we were the same, what areas we were different, and maybe who was slightly more quirky. But without further ado, let's welcome Lady Cee and JT. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey, thank you for having us.
Hey, man, thanks a lot for the invite. Appreciate that.
Hey, no, thanks for coming. So you guys are in Washington, D.C. right now?
Yes, we're right here in the nation's capital.
Yeah, and it's all kicking off. But
It sure is. Right now it is, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, always a fun place to be. So I said that we wouldn't cover too much of your backstory, but we still need to kind of understand where you stand in the plethora of religions out there. And now I've always said that high demand religion, we're all survivors of the same thing. We just had different old men telling us what to do. So
that's a good way.
You were both Jehovah's Witnesses, and you both served in leadership positions within Jehovah's Witnesses.
Well, women can't lead anything in the Jehovah's Witness faith, so I was more like a follower.
Women have to know their place.
Wow. Yeah.
Right.
I remember you were talking with John about an Excel spreadsheet and trying to let a brother know that it'd be much quicker to do something with an Excel spreadsheet, but you had to get JT to go tell him.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. No,
Exactly.
that's again, the first comparison, we're not quite that bad. It's not good. It's not good in Mormonism, but it's not quite that bad. So it's
women, we try to make ourselves, as women, we try to make ourselves agreeable, and we try to show that we're following, and you have to just put on that face. There's no resistance. No woman is going to stand up and resist in public, and tell people what they think and feel. That's not going to happen.
Wow.
No, there's not going to be any no women's movement in the Jehovah's. And the reason why is it's basically a patriarchal style religious belief system. And as anyone who's familiar with the patriarchal style of religion, there are specific roles and places that individuals are assigned, and that's where you stay. Or else you will run into problems. I guess you can try to get out of your role, but you will run into problems. There's no question about that.
Yeah, get back in your lane.
Yep.
No, same thing. Like everyone, if you try and email like the higher ups back in your lane, the email will get sent straight back to your local leader.
Oh, absolutely.
You can't get anywhere. It's like a business, very corporate structure, and there's no way through it.
No.
Well, it's amazing that you said that you get to email. That was never anything. We never had anything like that going on, because I don't even think the average Jehovah's Witness, even elder, knows the email address of the governing body.
Yeah, emails are not allowed, basically, like they are in other religions. They're starting to work more with it now, but basically they prefer letters. And now that they have their secure system, they're now moving more into that. They're trying to bring up to date, but then you only allow certain people can log in. So the email system is rolling along, but for years it was strictly letters. They were actually afraid of the internet. They actually, if you go back when the internet first jumped out with America Online here in the United States, Jehovah's Witnesses were just dogged for being on the internet. They made it a negative thing. And so witnesses were afraid of it. So there's actually a generation of witnesses that are somewhat, even today, they're somewhat uncomfortable with the internet. Of course, the younger people, you know, they're on it. And it's proven to actually be a problem for them. It's proven to be a problem.
You know, I used to be afraid of the internet when I was a Mormon missionary, and we were, you know, you get pass along cards. So for yourselves, I'm sure you have the same thing in your watchtower. And on the bottom, it would have the kind of website address, mormon.org or whatever it was at the time. And I used to hate giving them out because I didn't want anyone I was talking to go to Google and type the word Mormon. And I felt like the pass along card was prompting them to do that. Because if you type the word Mormon in Google, oh my gosh, there is so much that comes up that is not nice about the church. And
yeah, exactly. And then it's the same with Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, the algorithm brings back whatever's there.
Yeah.
Which includes channels like yours and ours.
Yeah, which includes the truth.
Well, then you must have known something that wasn't right when you were a missionary, because if you knew there was negative stuff, you didn't want to give out the email address or the website, then there was something that was lurking around your corner that you knew something was going on as well.
Yeah. So
Is that
what before I became a missionary, so in all young men are told when you grow up you're going to be a missionary. Okay.
Yeah.
That's like, if you don't do that culturally, it's a bad thing. There's a bad mark on you. You know, it's like the curse of Cain. And so before going on a mission, you have to go through the temple where you do all the secret stuff. So before you can do that, you have to have like classes and stuff. So the internet was pretty new when I was preparing to do that. And I went to Google, or maybe it was like Yahoo or something at the time before Google. And I just put in like Mormons, and I got back something about God having literal sex with Mary, which they do believe, but they don't want to talk about now. Something about the temple and the secret handshakes, and then something about some other thing in history. And I was like, what? I never heard of any of that. So I went to my mum and I said, what about these? And then on Sunday, the bishop took me in and sat me down and told me, and just kind of beat it out of, you know, just said, told me off, and shouldn't be looking there. So I didn't go look again, and I didn't want any of my potential members to go look again either. So
that for groups that pride themselves on information, wanting to tell people things, they're oftentimes the first ones to want to shut people down if it's not in their favor. And you would think that, I mean, just realistically, you would think to yourself, wait a minute, if we have the truth, it will stand anything. But that's not how that plays out. It's like, don't be testing it now. Don't be testing this stuff. And the reason why, because they know it's a house of cards. And if you ever seen kids or even grown people build a house of cards, you know it's very delicate. It looks very nice while it's standing. But if you just pull one card, everything collapses. And that's the way these types of religious belief systems are. And that's why they discourage people from actually doing too much digging, asking too many questions and things of that nature. That is a common facet of typically high control groups. Don't ask too many questions. Go sit down, be quiet.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, something the Mormons have been really good at is they've managed to brand everything that they haven't published. So anything that doesn't have their logo stamped on it as kind of anti-Mormon literature. And just anyone, like you give them anything. I could talk to family members and suggest they go read part of actual literature from the church, but because me, an ex-member, is suggesting that, it's bad, so they won't do it, you know, because I'm obviously trying to trick them. Or if I gave them something that just didn't have the logo on it, that's anti-Mormon literature, and that way Satan lies. So they've done a good job there.
Yeah. The witnesses have, the witnesses are kind of unique in that their literature is often time-stamped, much like milk.
Ooh.
Yeah, milk spoils. And so, as with any supermarket, they'll take it off the shelf. Well, Jehovah's Witnesses do the same thing. Their published material many times has an expiration date, and so they will remove it out of circulation. So every Jehovah's Witness knows anyone who references any published material that is out of date, you basically can shun it. You basically can avoid it. And they will argue, well, that's not the latest. That's not the latest. We talking about the latest. You talking about something that's old. That's old stuff. But they miss the very important point. You say that stuff was God's, and then you tell me it's not God. And that's the part. And that was one of the reasons why we set up our channel the way we did. And we called it what we do. We called it critical thinkers, because one of the things that we observed is that was basically the problem that Jehovah's Witnesses have. Jehovah's Witnesses are not critical thinkers. In fact, the organization teaches you not to be a critical thinker. And the way they do it is because they teach you not to be an independent thinker, which means you're thinking independently of God. But the actual reality is it's not God that many times people are questioning. It's the published works of the uninspired Watchtower writers out of New York. But because they have so merged the two together, God, and we often laugh about this, you can tell a Jehovah's Witness can hear something like this. The Bible says, Jesus says, the Watchtower says, the governing body says, the Holy Spirit says, and they will see no difference. They will, whatever statement is made after you reference that entity, it carries the same weight.
Wow.
So once you can convince people and that what you say carries the same weight, and the Watchtower stated that, they made the point that you should listen to us as you would the voice of God. So when you got people who are being taught this from a very young age, or they're being introduced to it, and everybody in their circle is buying into this, after a while, it becomes very easy to tell people whatever you want to tell them, and it works. And before we came on the air, my wife and I, we were discussing, these different religious belief systems. They all have a very similar common thread, and that thread is they're either low control or high control, and everything in between. Because what you will find is you examine different religious belief systems. They often have a combination of things that are based on the Bible, and then they have stuff that's made up.
Mm-hmm.
And the stuff that's made up, you have to view it as if it is from the Bible. And that's what beliefs, especially in Christianity, that's what the belief systems do. And it only varies and differs many times to the degree of how much autonomy they will give their members in terms of making decisions for themselves. And as you move up and down the scale, you'll see in one belief, they allow their members to make decisions on what they wear, how they cut their hair, or what they work at, whether they want to go to school or not, whether they want to do this. Whereas others, they're very strict. You have to wear this. You can't wear this. You must wear a bonnet at all times. And so you see that whole spectrum in religious belief system. And like you said before, you just look at them and you compare them and you see, well, which one has, as some people will say, which one have the looniest man-made teachings, and it varies greatly. It varies greatly.
Awesome. So do you guys get like fundamentalist breakoffs who take the doctrine like super serious, or they're kind of like, no, we need to go back to some of the original doctrine and kind of break away? So we have a lot of like Mormon fundamentalists who still practice polygamy and are just in their own compounds and things. Does that happen over your side of the fence?
What happens on our side is very interesting. It's almost the opposite. The original believers, the original followers of Charles Taze Russell, they still exist. They're known as the Bible students. Here in Washington, D.C., they have Bible students. They still study what's called the volumes, the studies in the scriptures, the volumes. They still follow the teachings of Charles Taze Russell. So when they look at quote unquote Jehovah's Witnesses, they will tell you, y'all broke off from us. We were here at the beginning. Y'all just jumped up back in the 30s. We've been here since the 1800s. And so that is really the way they look at Jehovah's Witnesses, as the breakaway group. Jehovah's Witnesses look at them as, well, y'all didn't change when we changed. Well, we didn't change because we had the truth. Y'all changed the truth to the false. And so, I mean, that's the type of dynamics. Generally speaking, you will find very few breakaway groups from the Jehovah's Witnesses. In fact, that was one of the things that a lot of former Jehovah's Witnesses were disappointed in with a gentleman. His name was Raymond Franz. Raymond Franz was a member of the governing body, which is the like in the with the Mormons, you have the 12 apostles. He was quote unquote like that at that level within the organization. And everyone was, a number of people, not everyone, but a number of people were expecting him to start Jehovah's Witness 2.0. And he didn't. And so that's what you often get, because as you mentioned, that's what you often see. Most religions is a result of a breakaway, because that's what happened with Charles Taze Russell. Yeah. He did not continue to follow the religion of his mom, dad, and brothers and sisters. He started his own church, and his folks like, we ain't following you, boy. You must be crazy. and so when you look back, it's amazing.
I was going to say that I got a phone call from someone a couple nights ago from New York City, and she said, would you please put this out on your next broadcast? Now, this is a group of people that they're part of the LGBTQ community, and it's about 40 people. And what ended up happening was they got kind of like kicked out of their space as one of Jehovah's Witnesses when they came out. So she was just telling me that they still believe that the religion itself is the truth. And so about 40 different people from this group are now studying get this, their watchtower on their own in their own locality. And they've been doing this for a while, but it's interesting. You you asked that question, and then this happened. This came up a couple of days ago from a friend of mine in New York.
Yeah. And Petey, it's understandable, because most religious belief systems, they do have teachings that are based on the Bible, and you can turn to the Bible and say, this is what it says. Mm-hmm. And so when people leave a religion, they say, well, I want to hold on to the good stuff, but I'm gonna let the crazy stuff go. And then what? And this is the pattern. This is the exact pattern, man. You will have people who will look at their religious belief system and they will point out all the crazy stuff, unscriptural stuff. That's what Charles Taze Russell did. He looked at the church that his mom and daddy went to, and he said, well, mom and dad, this is crazy. And so he abandoned those crazy teachings, and he said, I'm gonna just stick to the Bible. But this is what always happens. And this is the pattern we've looked at this, and this is what you see over and over and over. Person starts out, him and a couple of friends, they agree. And then all of a sudden you get a few more friends, they agree. And they're just sticking to these truth teachings. But after a period of time, they start introducing their own. Yeah. They start introducing their own. And they literally become what they left. They literally, and as a Jehovah's Witness, we used to talk about that, how we left those things. But then we turn around and do the same thing. Let me just a quick example. At one time, Jehovah's Witnesses did not excommunicate people or disfellowship people. They did not do that. In fact, they wrote a scathing article on the Catholic Church for excommunication and disfellowshipping. And they outlined all these things about disfellowshipping and excommunication was demonic. It was from Satan. It was unscriptural. It was unloving. It was hurtful. They just did a whole laundry list of all the reasons why this has no place in Christianity. But then they realized one of the things that they did say about excommunication, and they liked it, is one of the most powerful controlling tools a religion can have. And you guessed it. Less than 10 years later, they had incorporated and built their own excommunication disfellowship program. Same program they just dogged 10 years ago. Then they got theirs 10 years later. They had it up and running. And today, it is the most devastating tool that Jehovah's Witnesses have in their arsenal that they use toward people who don't follow the rules. And it's powerful. It drives people, unfortunately, man. It literally drives people to commit suicide. We just recently, I mean, less than 30 days ago, we had someone, we had actually spoke to this guy twice. And man, he'd been cut off, his family, his wife, his children. They was told that he was wicked. He was Satan's first cousin. I mean, and everything. He was no good father. I mean, just everything. And we had spoke to him twice, man. We were supposed to have gotten back together again, but he had just reached the point. If I had known, we would have tried to at least reach out, but it just got him to the point. He said, JT, they took my family, man. They taken all my family. And very loyal Jehovah's. He was an elder. He was involved in a lot of watchtower projects all over the state that he lived in. Very active. So he wasn't a quote unquote weak Christian. He was considered a good, solid brother. But when he found out certain doctrines and he started inquiring about those doctrines, man, they shut him down like an ATM machine on the third try, and you get the wrong PIN number. They shut him down, and it got to him. And I ended up getting a phone call from someone one evening, and we were informed that he had taken his life. So these high control groups, they're no joke, because they literally have you evaluating your self-worth with yourself and in the eyes of God. And when you have that on the table, man, that's what makes them so dangerous. And that's really the thing. High control groups, they're dangerous because they can literally, if you have a person who's on the edge, a high control group can push you over. I mean, it's just that simple.
Yeah. So you were, we mentioned earlier you've got your own YouTube channel, EXJW Critical Thinker, and you've got your website, which is awesome, EXJWcriticalthinker.com. I wrote it down just so that I didn't get the .com wrong. What led you from being a believing Jehovah's Witness to where you are now, to starting the YouTube and the website? And as you say, it's almost like they hold this spiritual gun to people's heads. What made you kind of say, I don't care?
Well, you mean how we woke up from the religion?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? When we look at our lives, we were like in our own home. I would consider us liberal Jehovah's Witnesses, like just within our own life, that we live. In terms of we didn't let them make us fearful of having a conversation. So, like if there was something that was stated at one of the meetings at the Kingdom Hall, and we would come home and freely discuss it, and look at what was going on in the congregation, right? So you're having these conversations, you're looking at what's being taught, and you're just talking about it, which means that you're not going to be like, oh, we better not say that, and then going further into that mindset of listening to everything they tell us. So the day that there was this article that came out about the 1914 teaching and how they changed it, I remember coming home from the meeting that day, and JT kind of approached me and said, look at the teaching, look at this teaching. I didn't even know, it kind of went over my head. And he brought it to my attention, and he told me, if the world don't come to an end by the year 2000, I'm out of here. And I looked at him like, huh? But then he started to explain to me about the teaching of the 1914 and how they made the change. So it was that teaching. Then it was the one about they had this thing about the sheep and the goat, and how we're not doing the separating of the sheep and the goats anymore. And then we had already been talking about this other issue about alternative service, and how the Watchtower made this hard, fast ruling about you cannot do alternative service in this country if it presents itself. So it's like, oh yeah, you're not going to go to war regardless, but the alternative service issue was like, well, you're not going to do that either. And then the magazine came out talking about, oh, you know what? Well, the reason why you didn't take the alternative service job is because, you were your conscience was too strict, right? So, we're looking at all these things. We're comparing the craziness that's going on in the congregation, the problems in leadership in our organization, in our own personal congregation. And we're thinking to ourselves, wow, then we're on the internet, right? So we were back and forth on the internet, because during that time it was becoming more, fashionable. I really shouldn't say fashionable. It was becoming a norm that this was just now coming about. And of course, we got our computer and things like that, and we were online, and we found an online bulletin board, and JT was up there trying to defend the Watchtower, talking to somebody. And the person told him, go get Crisis of Conscience by Raymond Franz. And read that. And we've talked about this before, so I won't go into a lot of detail, but the long story short is once he got to that book and he read that book, everything came flooding back to him about all the things he was thinking when he was at Bethel, all the people that Ray Franz was writing about in the book. He knew those people personally, or somebody that knew that person, because some people had already died. But he could relate to everything in that book. And that is what really got us out of the religion. And then later on, and it wasn't until like years later that we actually came out on the internet, because I'm gonna tell you right now, and I'll tell people this. we left Watchtower, and then for the next 10 years, we had our head in a book going to college. And I look back at my life and I say, I don't know if I would do that again, because I spent so much time with my head in a book in the educational realm that when I finally woke up, I was like, where am I? Right? Yeah. But bottom line is I got through my degree program, but it took us so long because we only went back part-time, and we didn't go every semester. So we finally graduated from college. And then it was my father that got me on YouTube, because he said to me, have you been on YouTube lately? Have you seen all these Jehovah's Witnesses out there? And then he goes, you guys need to get out there with your channel. He said, because all the information that you got and all the life experiences that you have, he goes, why don't you guys get out there and get your channel going? So we did that, so I mean, and so that's how we, kind of like got online, was my father. He was like out there more than I was. So
awesome.
Yeah.
I think very similar things happen on our side. Joan Galloway just said there, God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. That's kind of a saying that we have. And then until he's not. And
until he's not.
It's so true.
Say that again now. What's that again now?
God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And then like you read stuff from, like you said, you're reading from the 1800s, 1900s, and you're like, wow, it's the same God saying the exact opposite thing.
I know. I mean, realistically, man, and this is the thing about sometimes when you look at religious belief systems, they will have God, quote unquote, contradicting himself. And so at some point you've got to ask your question, I don't think you know what you're talking about.
Right. And
that's what it boils down. They really didn't know what they was talking about. They might have been sincere, but they clueless. Just clueless.
Right. Yeah. And then PD, for your audience, I better go back and double click on that, because when I talked about 1914 and stuff like that, and separating of the sheep and the goat, what that means is there's a generation that saw the First World War.
Okay.
In the Jehovah's Witnesses, and that's the way they categorize it. The people that lived during that time or remembered that time would still be on the earth when the end of the world came.
Ooh.
That was the 1914.
That's the 1914
situation.
Teaching.
Right.
The generation of 1914.
Yeah. And so that's when JT was like saying, wait a minute, the 1914 generation, they're like 80 and 90 years old right now. Then they stopped teaching that.
Stopped it.
Because they realized that they were going to get caught in the time war. The time ran out.
Time ran out.
And so then we had been preaching, going out and like knocking on doors, trying to recruit people to the Jehovah's Witness faith. And based on this teaching, we were telling people, don't go to college, you ain't got to work meaningful jobs, you ain't got to like save for retirement. Now, mind you, the Watchtower did not actually come out and tell people that. Now, they did give talks from the platform, and they have a newsletter called Kingdom Ministry. I don't know what it's called now, but in that magazine, they would try to steer you to these other facets of life, which meant that you would not be going to college. You would not be looking for a career in the system. You would not be saving for retirement, because these things are futile. Because why? Because the end of the world is so close that there's no reason for you to even be trying to embark on a career in this world. Because what did they say? They said, if you put all of these things in this world, all of your energies into this world, I would not invest in a world that's going out of business. That's the way they presented it.
Wow.
So you have all these Jehovah's Witnesses that don't have money for retirement. They don't have education. You know, they don't have careers. A lot of people work as handyman, janitors, cleaning businesses and stuff like that.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
we treat life like a flyover state, and I think it's kind of like what you're talking about with this system, and it's like eternity. The Mormons. I'm not a Mormon anymore, but they believe in a pre-earth life for eternity before and eternity afterwards. So this 70 years, who cares what happens in this 70 years as long as you're faithful? You know, there's nothing important in this 70 years. You're just flying over. You're not bothered what's in Nebraska. You want to get to California.
Fly over. You
You know,
California.
it's a flyover state. So, so
Yeah.
but they say the knowledge you gain in this life, you will take with you into the next life to build your own planets and Earths. So that's kind of the different thing. So we send people to college to learn because they need to take that with them. To create their own planets in the future.
Yeah.
But,
Oh wow, you gonna get your own planet?
yeah, we get the better prize.
You got a better prize. We were gonna be we were gonna still be on this earth, and once all the people had died, like most of the people, 99.9% of the people on the planet were gonna die during this Armageddon period. And then we were going to take this earth that was left over and transform it into a paradise. Can you imagine how long that would have taken to get rid of all the dead carcasses and all the construction and all the devastation that this small group of people is now going to have to transform this world into a paradise?
Yeah. Well, we're going to get there. We're going to get to Armageddon. But we know each other now. I feel like we've broken the ice sufficiently to play a game. So I've got this game. So we got a leaderboard, guys. Something a little bit different.
Cool. Let's check it out.
So on this leaderboard, we've got Mormons versus Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh boy.
Okay?
First
down here, we've got 11 rounds. Okay. Maven was just asking what the vote for. Anyone watching on YouTube, you'll see in the chat area there is a vote for Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses. That is the people's choice. As you listen, you can decide which side you think is more kooky or out there. Okay. So that's the bonus point at the end for the people's choice. So as we go down these different categories, we might not get through them all, and that's cool. We're going to let the Holy Spirit guide. I'll show you how we do that in a minute. But there'll be a point for each round. We'll decide between ourselves who kind of wins. You can let us know in the chat who you think should win. And then by the end of it, we'll see who got the most points and who came out on top. It's just a little bit of fun, something a little bit different. But the way we're going to choose, I've got the Holy Spirit spinner right here. Okay. And the Holy Spirit's going to spin this and choose the first category. See, I think this is an awesome, like they should have this at church.
Yeah, I'm telling you, right?
Like
that's what they do for their doctrine. They spin something properly.
There you go. Number 3. So number 3, we're going to start with gaslighting. Gaslighting. Awesome. So I think I'm going to go first. Okay. Because we just spoke about getting your own planet. And for years and years and years in Mormonism, we were all told that the whole point in this life was to come to earth to gain a body, to gain knowledge, to prove ourselves worthy of, exaltation. And then after this life, we would progress. And for those that gained the highest degree of the celestial kingdom, which was like the top heaven, because we have 3 heavens, and then the top heaven has 3 degrees within it. So there's like 6 heavens. No, wait, 5 heavens.
Oh,
And then there's hell, which is sons of perdition, out of darkness. But it's all very complicated. But if you get to the top, then you can have your own planet. And yeah, you can be about it. You'll need to create spirits to people that planet. And to do that, you have to have lots of celestial sex. And to do that, because you need to create billions of spirits, you need many, many wives in order to create all of those spirit babies. And that is where polygamy came from, because you have to practice it in this life to be practicing in order to have the many wives in the next life, so that you can make all those spirit babies to send them down to your earth. Now, a few years ago, what the church likes to do is they like to put up like frequently asked questions on their newsroom. So on the newsroom, they put up really quietly a list of like 15 frequently asked questions, and to kind of dispel myths about Mormonism, are you polygamous, things like that. And one of them that was quite shocking to a lot of us, it said, do you get your own planet in the next life? And it started with no, full stop.
Ooh.
And everyone was just like, whoa, buddy, we were going through all this on the promise that we get to create our own worlds. Worlds without number is what the manuals and the scriptures would say.
Oh,
and now they're just like, no, you don't get a planet anymore, because that's too weird to say that you get a planet in the next life.
Oh my goodness.
And we and we never told you would get your own planet. We never did. Prophets got up and they'd be like, well, I don't know that we teach that. So yeah, I'm gonna put that up as the Mormon example.
That's the ultimate gaslight.
Yeah. Like they were like, Oprah, you get a planet, you get a planet, you get a planet. And then
I know, right?
all of a sudden they realized they couldn't afford it, and they were like, no one gets planets. So yeah, I'm going with the planets.
It's interesting that you say that, because the Watchtower does something very, very similar, man. They specialize in gaslighting. I mean, they literally do. They told people who went to prison that if you didn't go to prison instead of going to take alternative service in the military, you would lose God's favor. Then they changed it, and they said, well, you can take alternative service. And then they said, we didn't tell you that. We didn't tell you that. And so the same when they changed doctrines, they would often tell Jehovah's Witnesses, well, you read too much into what we said. You took it too seriously. We didn't mean it quite like that. So they gaslight. Man, that is so amazing. They tell you something for years, and then when they change it, they basically blame the membership for getting it wrong.
But
wow,
didn't a lot of people go to prison over like the alternative service thing?
Oh man, yeah, all around the world. What was now? This is the kicker, Chief. Think about this. Imagine you was a Jehovah's Witness 18-year-old kid. You go to prison this week. The Watchtower changed the rules the following week, and then you got 4 years that you got to serve. And they blaming you that, well, you was too, your conscience was too strict. And that's what happened. A lot of Jehovah's Witness men got caught in prison with the change, and they couldn't get out. The court system was like, what do you mean y'all changed y'all mind? You told us last week you can do it.
With the 1975 teaching, when they told us that it was going to be nearing man's 6,000 year on earth, because they actually thought it was a literal 6,000 years. And then they said that, the end would be coming. And they were talking about 1975. They had all these people went out and charged up all this money on their credit cards and got into all kind of debt. We know somebody that canceled themselves out of the pension fund because the end was coming. It was a whole bunch of stuff. People were selling their homes, and then they said, that was some brothers that did that. We didn't give you any inkling. We didn't make you think that any world was coming to an end. You did that on your own.
Yeah.
All these yet the Watchtower had an article saying, why are you looking forward to 1975? But it's like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
So they got
it's not.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's funny because when you talk to Jehovah's about 1975, they will latch onto it. Well, we didn't directly say it. And then when you turn around and say, okay, you didn't directly say it, but you implied it. But there are three or four other examples where you directly see it, and all of a sudden you just see the wind go out of their sail. Because 1914 the world ended, 1918 the world ended, 1925 the world ended. They even said the world would have ended by the end of the 20th century. And here we are now, almost 23 years into the 21st century. And the world was supposed to have ended in the 20th century. So even when a Jehovah's Witness jumps on and tries to defend 1975, the Watchtower has so much they publish predicting the end of the world, it doesn't even matter. And we made the point in one of our videos that you need to understand what it means when a person predicts the end of the world. They're basically trying to prove that Jesus Christ is a liar. The Bible says that Jesus said, I don't know the day or the hour. So when you have a religious denomination and those in leadership decide they know when, they're trying to prove Jesus Christ a liar. I mean, the arrogance of religious leaders, man, has no boundaries, none.
Yeah. Sorry. You guys, like, for us not getting a world, that's okay 1 minute to the next, because you're like, well, it doesn't affect me in this life. But going to prison and then being told you didn't have to, and we never actually said that. Or giving up your pension because the end of the world's coming next year, and then the end of the world doesn't come, and they're just like, well, we never said that. So I'm giving you the point for round 3 because that's unreal. Like, they gaslight us about eternal consequences. You guys are on daily consequences.
Daily consequences, man. Daily, every day.
Okay, let's hit the.
I would love to have my own planet, though.
Sorry,
that is cool.
I would love to have my own planet, though.
Yeah. Well, would you love all the sister wives, though?
No.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, man, I used to work with this lady. And whenever she was discussing the Bible, she would say, JT, I just have certain problems when it comes to religious beliefs, because you always can tell there's a man's hand all up in the background somewhere, And so when you start talking about polygamy, that's the benefit of the man.
Women, absolutely.
Women, they get the short end of the stick.
Right.
Okay, let's hit the next. Let's see what we got next. Okay, the brethren are praying. What are we gonna do? Okay, number one. What's number 1? Sacred rights. Now, I've put this one in here, and what I mean by sacred rights is secret rights. Okay, is there anything secret that the Jehovah's Witnesses used to do that only Jehovah's Witnesses were either allowed to know about, or kind of like stuff that when new people come, you're like, we don't talk about that because we don't want to scare them away, like milk before meat?
Not really.
Yes, it is. They don't talk about shunning. They don't tell people if they get baptized, and they never tell people that if they get baptized and they do something wrong, they're gonna get disfellowshipped or shunned, or if they want to just walk away from the religion, they're gonna be ostracized by the people. We don't talk about that to people.
Yeah, but it's not really secret. He's talking about, see, the Mormons, they got the magic undercurrent.
This is why I put it in, because I knew this was a guaranteed point.
Jehovah's Witnesses can't touch the magic underwear, man. They can't. They can't touch the magic drawers.
We had to give him because you got, like you said, you got secrets. Y'all got secrets.
Y'all got magic drawers, man. I mean,
what would you say? What would the Jehovah's Witnesses say about like Mormons and the temple and stuff like that? What would be the normal attitude?
They would look at that as along the lines of something demonic. We live here in Washington, D.C., and there's a temple here in the Washington, D.C. area. You can see it when you drive around. It's beautiful. I mean, and the way it is situated next to what's called the Beltway. It's 10,000 cars pass it every day. Yeah. When the sun hits that thing, man, and they got like the dude with the little trumpet on top. When the sun hits it, man, it will literally blind. You can be and it will blind you because the sun reflects, the reflection of the sun. They just open it up. You can go. They are letting people go inside now to certain parts that for decades people could not go. And that they, from what I understand, man, the lines are just because you've seen this building for 30 years, man. And you're like, but you can't go into certain parts of it. And now they made the announcement. You can come visit us and see the magic part and stuff, But yeah, y'all got that secret stuff. I got to give it to you. Yeah, y'all got that, man. Yeah,
Okay, so give us some secrets.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tell us about that.
So, well, I can't tell you the stuff that I've sworn not to say
Okay, we
Yeah.
understand. We totally get that.
We
upon
understand.
pain of death.
We
So
understand.
that's how bad it is. There are certain parts that you have to covenant not to tell. And gaslighting with the current the current ceremony, you make signs and tokens and passwords and handshakes, secret handshakes to get past the angels that stand as sentinels, at the veil to get into heaven. Okay. So if you don't have them when you get there, if you don't know like the secret club handshake, then you're screwed.
Yeah.
So you can't reveal them. They're Masonic handshakes, okay? Because Joseph Smith was a Freemason. He wanted to
Yes, I
create
thought. Yeah.
his own Freemasonry, so he created it within the church, and all the symbols are Masonic symbols. And yeah, it's you go in, and first of all, you have to do. There's baptisms for the dead, so which gets a little
Yeah.
bit creepy, I
That
guess,
it
from
does. Yeah. When I
from
heard
the
that
other
explained, I
side.
was believing.
Yeah, so we do the genealogy, and people that haven't been baptized in this life, you send your like youth, your 12-year-olds, your 13-year-olds to go be baptized over and over and over again. And the priesthood holder that's doing the baptism, I've done it before. You stand there in the font, and you've got a smaller person because it's easier with children to be dipping them all the time. And there's a little screen, and there'll be someone up top, and he's got a long list of names, and it's got the prayer. And you say, having been commissioned of Jesus Christ, I baptize you for and in behalf of, and then you say the person's name, and a different person's name will come up each time. And then who is dead? In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, amen. And then you dip them, and then you bring them up, and another person's name will be there, and you do the same thing 40, 50 times.
Yeah.
And then another priesthood holder will get in. Yeah, same kid over and over again. It's like going swimming.
He be getting water. Kid be getting waterlogged, man.
Yeah. So you do that. There's that work for the dead. It's all about work for the dead. And then later on, there is you have to be washed and anointed. So back in the day, you'd get in a bathtub, and a priesthood holder, you'd be naked, and they'd wash all of your whole body, saying a certain prayer at the same time about washing your loins, your arms, your legs, and different things.
So would the men wash the men and the women wash the women?
Yes. And then you get out, and they'll anoint you with oil all over. Okay. But these days you just do it kind of a few little bits, like they'll just anoint your chest and different things. You don't get a whole wash anymore. And you got to wonder if God had an issue with having to get the whole body washed back then. Now these days you only get a tiny bit washed. You're just like, well, has he changed his mind?
Well, you got to figure, man, we got running water now. God figured you probably washed yesterday, so you probably feel clean. You ain't too dirty from yesterday.
Yeah.
Here's my question to you, PD. How nerve-wracking is that? Because you're waking up every day knowing that you got to get somebody baptized. You got to do all these different things to do this worship. I mean, how does a person get through their day knowing that they've got to do these rituals?
Okay, so the church is big on saying to everyone, you need to be going to the temple as much as possible, because we need to get everyone through the system, and when it comes to like a baptism's really quick, a washing and anointing is really quick because it's like 5 minutes. You can do them over and over and over again. But when it comes to the next stage, which is the endowment, that takes 2 hours. That's like you go in, and there's a 45-minute video presentation about the creation of the earth, and you do all the signs and tokens, and you pass through the veil and give all the signs and tokens. That takes a long time. So they want people to be going all the time, because once you've gone and done it for yourself, you have to go back and do it for all the dead people. Okay. And you pretend to be that person for the 2 hours.
What?
Yeah. And do it vicariously. Okay. So you do that.
A lot of repetition.
Yeah. It's just the same thing over and over. Like the amount of times you fall asleep during the video presentation, because you sit in what's like a little cinema. Okay. And the lights go down, and maybe the first 20 minutes, half an hour, it's just movie. Nothing happens. There's no need to get up and sit down and change your clothes. So it's pretty boring, and it's the same thing over and over and over for 2 hours. So yeah, you go and do it, but you're doing it for that person. But I think the church, they've got that, but they use it as a leash for people, because to get into the temple, you have to have a temple recommend. And a temple recommend, to get one, it lasts for 2 years. It's a little card, and it's signed by your bishop, so like your local elder, and your stake president. They look after like a group of wards, like a little region. Okay, so you have to go and have an interview, 2 interviews, and it's the same questions in both interviews, 15 questions, and they're all yes or no answers. Do you believe that Joseph Smith was a prophet of God?
Ooh.
Do you believe that the current president of the church and 12 apostles are prophets, seers, and revelators? Do you pay your tithing? Do you keep the word of wisdom? Do you pay observe the law of chastity? So there's all these questions about living the life. And if you don't say yes and no in the right places, so there's ones about associating with people who are against the church. Do you associate with people who live otherwise in accordance with the gospel? So if you're part of a group, so people who come on here would have to say, yes, I do, and then they wouldn't get a temple recommend. And then you have to go and sort that out in your life, and then go get your temple recommend back, because only temple recommend holding adults are on what they call the covenant path. And the covenant path leads back to Heavenly Father. So to be on the covenant path, you have to have your recommend. Even if you can't get to the temple, you have to have your recommend and be living your life as though you were attending every day. And then, yeah, you can go to the temple. And I don't think we're not as bothered about going to the temple, I don't think, as you guys were about missionary work.
Yeah.
Like,
I got a question. Okay, you said something about 2 years. Okay, so like all the stuff that you just told me to do, that you do, are you doing this for a lifetime, or are you doing this just for that 2-year period?
You do it for a lifetime.
Ooh.
So
Okay.
the recommend is basically it lasts for 2 years. So every 2 years you need to go do the interviews again, and sort yourself out if you're
Can
not
I
living.
ask a question?
Go for it.
From your own observation, and I know this is just based on your own experience, and I recognize that. What is the level, man, of people struggling with like guilt, anxiety, just feelings of worthlessness? I can't keep up. I'm not doing enough. Because as in the Jehovah's Witness religion, we have certain things that we did as well, and you were measured by it, and you understood it was a direct reflection on your standing before God. That's basically what it meant. You were either a spiritual person or an immature person, spiritually weak. And so how do people in your religion deal with that level of stress of run faster, jump higher?
Yeah, I think it's awful. Scrupulosity, it's that kind of OCD about your spiritual health. And some people really struggle with it. I really struggled with it, leaving the church. My mental health is so much better because I don't feel daily guilt or shame for either not doing what I'm supposed to be doing or not visiting that sister I'm supposed to visit. And it's just, yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, you
Wow.
touched on a good word, OCD. I mean, like JT mentioned earlier, if you didn't already have issues before you became a Jehovah's Witness, then the laws and stuff that they put on you would make you go even more crazy. But it's almost like when I listen to what you're saying, I had went to a recovering from religion meetup several years ago. And the people that were actually sponsoring it was in Alexandria, Virginia, and it was actually a Mormon. It was like a Mormons group.
Yeah, it was.
And when one of the persons told me about that when I was at that meetup, I was like, oh my God, my personality type, I could not be a Mormon. I mean, because it's so much repetition, and it's just like I couldn't do that. I just couldn't wake up every day thinking that I'm so far behind. I got to sit in some 45-minute presentation and things like that. I couldn't do that.
Yeah, it's difficult as well because the Mormons pride themselves on not paying anyone anything. they're like, oh, we have volunteer everything, but we don't. There's a lot of, you know, the apostles and the really big leaders get 6-figure salaries and $1 million golden handshakes and things like that. So but when it comes to temples, they're all run by volunteers. So they don't just want you to be going and doing it. They want you to run the place as well. So you go to be a temple worker and you have to commit and say, right, I'm going to give so many hours every week, and I'm going to drive an hour to the temple, and I'll be there, you know, every third Saturday, I'll be in the temple. My parents for 3 years lived at the temple. They were the temple president and matron, and they're still big into church. So that's their thing. But you do 3 years. Yeah, 3 years living there every day, running the place. So it's, yeah, everything's centered around the temple. But you can't tell people that, because if you told like an investigator, we call people who are looking at it, we call them investigators. If you told an investigator, you're going to have to go to the temple after a year, or maybe it's 6 months now, I'm not sure. But after so long, we want you to go to the temple, take out these secret rites, and then you're going to be held to that level constantly. You know, walk around with the temple recommend questions in your mind. Am I keeping up to my temple recommend? And that's the first stick that they will beat you with. So when I know another YouTuber and she's still at church, and, you know, they're like, are you living in accordance with your temple recommend? Does your YouTube channel qualify you for a temple recommend?
Oh my goodness.
But that's what they do. It's the first thing they'll beat you with. So
it's amazing.
You're talking about the physical beating?
No, spiritual beating.
Okay, good. Well, I mean, I don't know, because, you know,
probably
other
feel
people
like
that maybe
they finished with you.
Well, yeah, but you know, he said there's a stick, so I'm thinking, hey, look, there's
Yeah.
somebody getting the beating over here.
No, it's the rod that they beat you with.
Yeah, the
Okay.
spiritual rod.
But
you took right here with
you'll like
All
this
right.
before we move on. Okay,
Go ahead.
The pinnacle in the temple is to have your second endowment, or your call in an election made sure, and that is for couples who have done everything they need to do in this life to achieve godhood. Okay, and they bring them in, and an apostle will come and wash their feet and declare them saved, and that they are exalted, and that they've done enough, and that the only thing that they can now do in this life to ruin it for themselves is to deny the Holy Ghost. But everything else is okay now, because they've done enough.
Wow.
And you're like, and that's super secret now. It used to not be secret, but then I think it got to a point where everyone wanted it. So now it's just the super secret, even from like endowed Mormons who've been to the temple and done everything. When they hear about it, they're just like, no, you can't be made a god in this life. No, you can. You go and have your second anointing, and
wow,
you are a god incumbent.
So being made a god means they don't have to do all the rituals anymore?
No, they do. They keep going, because they've got to that level in the church where all they do is church work.
Okay.
So
I'm trying to find a place where somebody can finally sit down.
No, not in this life.
No sitting down. No sitting down.
Okay, so I'm gonna give the Mormons that one.
I think y'all got that one. Y'all got that.
Y'all
one.
definitely got that one, boy.
Here we go.
Exactly.
Save that one. So we're on 1-1 right now. We're drawing.
Wow.
See what's next. I love this. We're gonna do this more.
This is amazing.
I didn't realize that you guys were. I mean, yeah, I'm learning a little bit more about your religion now through this.
Number two is Us Versus Them Persecution Complex. I'll let you guys go first.
Oh boy.
Oh goodness. That's everything.
Yes, pretty much everything, man. Anyone who speaks negatively against God's people, that's persecution. And the persecution complex, in fact, if you read some of the older publications, the president of the Watchtower Society, they would actually write articles knowing that it would elicit a blowback from perhaps people who were like very strong political believers in their country. They knew what it would do, but of course it made the witnesses stronger, quote unquote, because they told them, people are going to hate you. It's the same thing with David Davidian. He told his people the government was out to get us. The government's out to get us. The guy in Waco, Texas. And you can only imagine you're 4 years old, 7 years old, 9 years old. You look out the window and what do you see? You see the entire surrounding of your complex with military equipment. That's exactly what David said. David said they would come to get us. And so the same with the Jehovah's Witnesses. One of the things that witnesses will do is they'll make it seem like they're the only ones who's persecuted, like in Russia. Right now, if you talk to any Jehovah's Witness, you would think that only the Jehovah's Witness denomination is having problems. Just us. And the reason why, because we God's people. The fact of the matter is, Russia don't really care much for American religions because they think, the communists believe every religion from America is part of the CIA anyway, so they don't even care. But the witnesses believe that their persecution is a result of, like most, we're God's people. And when other people are suffering, it don't count. It don't count. So,
and the way that works, and then just to further expand on what JT was saying, the way that works is whatever we believe in that other people don't believe in, that we now get knocked up, like when people start coming and going against us. So like, we're talking about the flag salute. We're talking about going to war, working for military installations. We're talking about no holidays, no birthdays, just anything that goes against the grain of what, like no blood transfusions. It used to be no organ transplants. It used to be no skin grafting if you were in a fire. So if anybody went against anything that you did and started, attacking you and saying, I can't understand why you can't do this,
persecution.
It's us against them kind of thing.
Yeah, the us versus them. That's a very strong tool in high control groups.
Yeah, we have a similar thing. The church in its infancy with Joseph Smith, the saints went through like loads of physical kind of attacks from the local militias and the locals. And it was always put up as, these militias are controlled by Satan and they're attacking the saints, they're persecuting the saints. And the members, the early Mormons, were driven further and further west by this until they got to Utah, which was obviously, virgin ground for the Mormons, but there were loads of Native Americans that lived there and they got rid of all them. But yeah, this whole, there's something called Horns Mill, and it was a time where the militia came, and there was lots of issues because the Mormons were moving to a town and they'd be like taking over. They show up like 500 strong to a town that's only 100 people, and they'd be like, right, we're taking your town, and everyone gets angry about that. And then when they start taking their daughters as polygamous wives, they get really angry about that.
I guess they did.
Okay, so they're like, no, you're not taking my daughter. So everyone was really angry whenever they came, because they came in such strong numbers and had such weird ideas and expected the world to just kind of bow down to Joseph Smith. That guy, he made himself, they started a town called Nauvoo, okay? And they got a town charter from the government to start this town, and he made himself colonel of the Nauvoo militia, and he'd walk around in a colonel's outfit. Okay,
oh my goodness,
like the full deal. And yeah, so he crowned himself king of the world. Okay, that's how like crazy this guy was. But Horns Mill was a time where a local militia came, and a bunch of guys and young boys who were working the fields who couldn't get away, they gathered in this mill for protection, and basically the militia came and wiped everyone out. But it's seen as like a thing, like how it's held up, oh, we were persecuted like this, to the point that they took their lives. And it's the same thing, I think. They're like, whenever persecution comes, it's just like the early saints and Satan trying to pull us down. And yeah, they don't like it. And there was something they always say, the prophets would say, you need to live in the world, but not of the world.
Oh yeah.
Okay, you can love the sinner, but hate the sin.
Yeah.
Okay, and because everyone's going to be a Mormon one day anyway, because we're going to baptize you all in the temple when you're dead.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's amazing.
So, you know, it's okay. But I think from what I've heard from your side, everyone who's not a Jehovah's Witness is like damned to destruction anyway.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The
Right.
Jehovah's Witnesses teach a very simple teaching. You're either on God's side or you're on Satan's side. And since we on God's side, the rest of y'all, we know where y'all at. And so it's a very simple black and white. It's easy. It doesn't require you having to deal with an individual personality, their own likes, and you just can whenever you can broad brush entire groups. This is just the history of broad brushing in general. Whenever you can broad brush an entire group of people, it's easy. That's what Hitler did. Hitler understood, if I can just broad brush an entire group, then you won't have any feeling for them. And so that is a very effective tool. And that's what the way is with witnesses. Witnesses understand, if I come to your door, I mean, there's so many ways. When a witness comes to your door, knocks on it, and they walk away, they will say, God will sort them out. And they're not talking about you on their side. That's not what they're talking about.
Right.
So,
but not only that, I feel like when the Jehovah's Witness, when I was just mentioning all those things that they do or not allowed to do, if a person comes up to you and starts to say something about you and that belief you have, then they'll just let you know that that's because they're on Satan's side.
yes.
And Satan allows that. And so, but by you being over here, they'll tell you that you're being attacked by Satan. That's why, and so at that point, they even had a assembly program, a district convention, where they had this video called The Bunker. And in the bunker, they were showing how eventually there's going to be a time when Jehovah's Witnesses are going to have a bag packed at any given time to be on the run. And they were going to have to run to some bunker because Satan and all of his minions were going to be after them because they were the only people with true worship, and they're going to come after us. And so they had all these little kids that were scared and thinking, like this one man sent an email saying that his granddaughter doesn't want to go anywhere without her mother or anybody. Now she's like 10 years old because she's afraid that she could be out into the world somewhere and all of a sudden they got to get to a bunker and she won't be able to get there with her mom. So she doesn't want to go anywhere now.
Oh
and I got the email about a month ago.
Okay, you guys win that one. I'm going to give it to you because okay, so Mormons were always told you got to have a year's supply of food in the house. So I always grew up, there was always like a pantry or a closet or a cupboard that was
really?
full of canned and dried food, because everyone was told for decades and decades you had to have a year's worth of food supply for the end, basically. And now they've gone to 72-hour packs. So everyone should have, for every person there should be a backpack. Okay. And with the whole Ukraine-Russia thing, it's kind of poked its head out again. That everyone has a backpack with 72 hours worth of supplies. They even gave out like a list of supplies that you should have in the 72-hour pack. So, but I think because you guys see did see sinners as like just the devil's, he can have you and you're screwed. Whereas Mormons are like, no, don't worry about it, man. We'll sort you out when you're dead. So, well, I think you get that one.
That's a crying shame.
Okay, let's see what the brethren have got for us now.
Good.
Oh
boy, these religions, man, they be messing with people.
Number 9.
Religions be messing with people, man.
Yeah. Oh no, that's the bite model. Right. Number 9. Missionary work. Woo! That's a good one for both of us. I'll let you guys go first.
I can already tell you guys are probably gonna win us on that one.
Yeah, on that one.
I don't know,
Jehovah's Witness. Everybody that's one of Jehovah's Witnesses has not been a missionary. There's not that many missionaries in the Jehovah's Witnesses because we have something called regular pioneers, but a regular pioneer is not really considered a missionary because all they got to do is just get. It used when we were in way back in the day, it used to be 100 hours a month to be a regular pioneer. Then during our time, it was like 90 hours a month. Now it's like 70 to 90. So that regular pioneer would devote 90 hours a month to knocking on doors. But the only difference that would be from your group in missionary work is this person is committed to do this for the rest of their life or for the rest of how long they can do it. There's no real end date.
You see, this is why I think it's a close run thing, because we do 2 years of intense missionary work, you know, and then you come home from your mission and you're all G'd up about missionary work and sharing the gospel, but that wears off after a few weeks. And there's no strict requirement for you to carry on knocking on doors. So I think a lot of people see that they did their 2 years and now it's up to someone else to do their 2 years. Whereas you commit to a lifetime of so many hours a week knocking on doors. So I don't know. I think it's pretty close.
Yeah, I've always thought the missionaries for the Mormons, you did it for 2 years. But for Jehovah's Witness, you are required to knock on doors every month and report how many hours you knocked on doors. And if you fail to report, then of course at that point you get on the bad boys list. But a witness will never be able to stop knocking on doors. And if you can't knock on doors, write letters. If you can't write letters, make phone calls. You will have to move Watchtower's products. There's no point where you don't have to move the products anymore. You will always have to move the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society's products all the time.
No, there'll be Mormons out there who never.
But see, the thing about the Mormons is they got all those other rituals that they got to do.
Other stuff.
So they got to do that. You know, you guys, because you guys are going knocking on doors too. But you get away. You get a chance to get away from that. But you still got these other rituals that you have to do.
Baptisms, you guys. I mean, I'm telling you, man, religions, man. Oh my God, they come up with some of the. When you look back at the Pharisees and the washing up to the elbows, that's your first indication of just how crazy religious leaders can make up rules that ain't got nothing to do with jack, but they make them up and they enforce them. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing.
But I got a question for PD. So here's my question. What do you think is worse? The 2 years of the missionary that you got to do, or all of these other rituals? What's worse?
The 2 years.
Really?
Because with the other thing, once you've done your own, you can go back once a month, maybe. Some people won't go back for weeks. They don't keep a record. Well, they probably do keep a record, but they won't say you've not been this month. They will just continually encourage people to be going as often as you possibly can. And if they need workers, they'll be saying, we need workers, please. And if it gets really bad, your bishop will pull you into the office and say, can you commit to do this? But it isn't like set constantly. But as a missionary for 2 years, as a missionary for 2 years, everything about what you do for those 2 years is set down in a routine that the church has decided. 6:30, you wake up. If you don't wake up at 6:30, then you're in trouble, you know, and your companion's always there. So the only time you're not with your companion, it's like the Handmaid's Tale. The only time you're not with them is when you're in the shower or using the bathroom. You sleep in the same room, but not the same bed. You're not allowed out of the sight of one another. And it got to the point where if I lost sight of my companion, I started to panic because you're with that person constantly. And the companion is always changing. Sometimes you get someone you just can't get along with, but you have to get along because there's no way to change it. If you call the mission president and say, I just can't get along with this guy, you're seen as like a trouble causer, and you won't get up the levels and be the leader that you're supposed to be. So you just have to kind of learn to live with people. So that's a life skill, I guess. But 6:30 you wake up, 7 o'clock study till 9, and then you work from 9 till 9, and then 10:30 lights out every day. The lights are on after 10:30, you're in trouble.
Okay, so my next question would be for you then. I thought that 2 years was supposed to be actually going out knocking on doors. So, at what point is the person doing this door-to-door work that's on this 2-year mission?
Yeah, so on the 2-year mission, between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. every day, apart from one day, So you get one day called P Day, which is your preparation day to be able to go out and like do your laundry, send emails, write letters home. But from 9 a.m. till 9 p.m., that's your working hours, a 12-hour day every day. So you'll work knocking on doors, stand in the city center, stopping people asking questions, and then you'll make appointments to go see people who were like, yeah, you can come and see me and teach a lesson, go do like a Bible study. So you're always, and it's not just, if you've got appointments, you're supposed to be finding in between appointments. So something I hated was called bus contacting, but I had some companions who really loved it because you've got a captive audience. You're on a bus and you're moving at 30 miles an hour, they can't get off. Okay. So what they do is you sit down, and I used to cringe. I was no good at it. But they'd go to the front of the bus, okay? And they'd have the Book of Mormon out and some pass along cards, and they just start at the front of the bus and stop at every person and try and teach them. Okay. Until they got off. And then you get off and go to your next appointment. Or if you're walking in between appointments, you're supposed to stop everyone along the way because you don't know when the Lord will provide the meeting for you to meet that person. So yeah, all the time, 9 till 9, you've got to be finding people and teaching people.
Preaching at all times.
Was it always a foreign country that you had to go to, or because like we see people in our neighborhoods, could they have been from France coming over here? I mean, I'm just saying, you know.
Yeah, no, these days they send people to more exotic places from where they live. I think because they want to try and get them to go more. Because you know, if you're there are a lot more liberal Mormons now, and I think the culture's really softened down a little bit towards these young men who maybe want to go to university or want to, you know, just don't want to go on a mission, that they're not such social outcasts anymore. So the number of missionaries has dropped. So I think,
really?
you know, if you're more likely to get called from the UK to like Australia or somewhere. My nephew went to Australia. I went like half an hour up the road for 2 years. And the stupid thing is, at the time that I did it, in order to be fully focused on the work, the only contact you can have with home were letters or emails. And you got to call home on the telephone twice a year. You got to call, you got 2 calls a year, once on Mother's Day to wish your mother a happy Mother's Day, and once on Christmas Day to talk to your family.
Oh, wow.
So
I don't know about that one, because at least a pioneer in our group only has to put in 3 hours a day.
yeah, no,
that's amazing. Y'all got that one. Y'all got that one,
But
man.
but it's a lifetime appointment.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I mean, it's not really a lifetime appointment. It's just, if you become a pioneer, the role of pioneer, you never graduate out of that.
No.
Yeah.
And we know the whole concept is that once you start, you will not stop. Yeah, once you start, you will not stop. People do not start pioneering for the purpose of stopping. I'm going to do this until the end comes, is what they'll tell you. Till Jehovah's day arrive, you know. So,
or until they can't do it anymore physically.
Yeah,
their personal circumstances change.
Yeah. Well, did you ever bump into any Mormon missionaries when you were out pioneering?
People get mad. You had like the Mormons came by this morning, and then y'all here. The 70th Adventists gonna be here this afternoon. So you know, so people.
But I mean, you're giving me an education, because I mean, I always remember seeing them on the bicycles. Did you ride a bicycle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Right. You'd have different areas. So some areas they'd have said you need a car in that area because it's so big.
Right.
It's so spread out. So you need a car to go through all the little towns or whatever it is that you're covering. Yep. But other areas, they might be like, right, you can just walk. Like, you don't get a car, you don't get a bike, you can get a bus. And then other areas are bike areas where you'd go and you'd ride the bike. That was probably the most fun time, because in between appointments, you didn't have to stop for anything. You could just ride the bike, and you didn't have to touch your companion because you were riding a bike, and you just, you know, head down, some time to yourself for 20 minutes before you sit down and preach again. So it's hardcore for 2 years, but
let me ask you this question, because see, with Jehovah's Witnesses, the goal of knocking on doors is to get converts.
Yeah.
So how were y'all being evaluated? I mean, what was the return on investment for you guys? You sent two young guys out into a little town. How many people at the end of the year or whatever would actually end up becoming involved in the Mormon faith? Or did y'all just view it as we just gave a witness about Christ to this little town, and hopefully it touches their heart later on?
No, it's something we call numbers. So you talk about the business. A mission is so in the States, in Utah, multi-level marketing schemes are like the number one business, because a mission is just a multi-level marketing scheme. Okay.
Yeah.
You got the leaders at the top and the praise that flows up and down this triangle. So you got your workers at the bottom, and they go out and preach, and there are key performance indicators like how many Book of Mormons did you give away that day? How many first discussions did you have? How many second discussions did you? So there's a list of like lessons that you teach people before they get baptized. So you'll have to report all these numbers back every evening to your district leader, and then he will report them back up the line to the next one, and they'll be reported back every day. So they'll see where people either aren't doing so well or are doing well according to the numbers, and then those people with the better numbers will be rewarded. Okay.
Wow.
And they'll track the numbers through the mission. So the elders that are getting the good numbers will then get promoted, and then you'll look after a district. So you'll have your numbers and you have your district's numbers. And if your district's working hard for you, then that praise comes to you as the district leader, and then you pass a bit of it on. So that's the multi-level marketing thing.
Yeah,
it's the praise that trickles
that's the way
down.
the Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to be the secretary in the congregation, and that was one of my responsibilities, was to gather the numbers, and the numbers are used either in your favor, like you said, or they can be used against you.
Yeah. So in my 2 years, I baptized 20 people.
That's good, because the average Jehovah's Witness doesn't do that at all. If a Jehovah's Witness can baptize one person in their entire life, they've done a good job, because most of them don't. Most people become Jehovah's Witnesses either through personal contacts, family, friends, or they're what we call born in. They just grew up and then they got baptized.
Yeah. Well, Lady Cee, you're on mute. Let me take you off.
Or someone, I'm sorry, or somebody was married to Jehovah's Witness and they converted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you this though. What is the process from someone knocking on the door? What's like the timeline from knock on the door to being baptized?
Years ago, the goal was to meet a person in the ministry. And the way it worked was when people really didn't know Jehovah's Witnesses back in the day, and they did not have access to the internet to know that this was a cult, it would be 6 months. So you could actually meet someone at the door. They would be interested. They would study. Back in the day, it was a book called The Truth Book. It was called The Truth That Leads to Eternal Life. Then it became a book called Paradise Regained. I think it was that Paradise book. And then You Can Live Forever in Paradise. Okay. So from the time that you actually meet one of Jehovah's Witnesses at your door, you could be fully indoctrinated within 6 months.
Okay. So, and I think this is where Mormonism has a problem. 3 weeks. Okay.
Good gracious.
3 weeks.
You would never become a Jehovah's in 3 weeks.
3 weeks from door to baptism. Yeah. So it's because I think the rules were they need to come to church 3 weeks in a row, and they need to have had the 6 lessons that are set out. Funnily enough, the 5th one, which is tithing, so which is all about the money, the local bishop has to come along to that lesson so that he knows they definitely got the message that they have to pay.
Oh my God.
Yeah. They can't be baptized if they've not had the lesson on money.
There's gonna be some money
with the
involved.
bishop.
Well, see, with the Jehovah's Witnesses, you have 2 books that you got to study. So the first book, you got to go through that book, and then you have to do a second book. You have to then be attending meetings at the Kingdom Hall, and definitely before you get baptized as a Jehovah's Witness, you have to be proselytizing yourself, knocking on doors. Then, before you get baptized, I know when I got baptized, I think there was 120 questions I had to go through with one of the elders. So they would sit down and go through 100. I went through 120 questions. And I remember when I was going through my questions, my first 20 or 30, I memorized them. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not gonna be able to memorize all these questions. And so finally my conductor, because it was his he was a special pioneer in my congregation, and he was one of the brothers that did my questions. And he goes, oh, you don't have to memorize the questions. You just have to make sure that you agree with these questions. So when we go through the questions with you, if there's something that you don't understand while we're doing the questions, here's your chance to ask us questions to understand what you're agreeing to, right?
Okay.
So at that point, after I got through my ones that I memorized, then we got to the point where we were having a discussion about that question. Do you understand this question? Do you agree with this question? Now we can move on to the next question. That's how it was done, at least from my personal experience.
Yeah.
You know?
No, Mormons, they'll get them on the records like before they even know what being a Mormon is. And I think that's why they say there's 70 million like Mormons worldwide, but there's only about 3 or 4 million that actually go to church because they get people baptized so fast that they leave just as fast as they came.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that was why the Watchtower got rid of the 6-month program. They used to have a 6-month program. You would only study with someone for 6 months, and they found out that these people didn't have any depth in the organization, and so they would leave. Like you mentioned, today they want you to be fully indoctrinated, and that is what they do today. They make sure you fully indoctrinated so that you literally are afraid to leave. And that's
the thing about the 6 months. But the thing about the 6-month thing is, if the person takes the study the way they're supposed to with the conductor, they could literally be fully indoctrinated within that 6-month period.
Wow.
Because it doesn't take long to learn the lingo.
Yeah, if someone really wants to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they got to be doing it every week. They can't be hitting and missing. If they were doing it according to the way they were prescribed, then they literally could do that.
Yeah. No willy-nilly. They don't want to. Basically, the Watchtower position is along with the numbers. They want people who are going to be loyal.
Yeah.
And that takes time to take a person literally off the street and make them trust some guys out of New York with their very lives. You can't do that in 3 weeks. No. I don't know those dudes in New York. I ain't doing what they say. But after a period of time, once you get the confidence and they build it into you, then they can tell you, don't take this blood fraction this week, and they can change it to another blood fraction the next week. And a typical Jehovah's Witness won't miss a beat. Will not miss a beat.
Yeah.
Well, it will never happen that way now because the internet is so prevalent and people are just not gonna. They're not gonna be there. So the typical person that becomes a witness today is generally a person that was born and raised in it, decided they didn't want it, went out into the world, got into a life of debauchery, ran into a snag, almost got killed, or almost whatever you want to call how bad their life could have been. And they come back and say, I'm back.
They went into the
Jehovah,
world.
if I would have stayed with you, I would have never had these bad experiences. And then it's like they don't realize that they could have just left the religion and they didn't have to live a life of debauchery.
Yeah.
And they would have been fine.
It's like the Amish. The Amish will tell their kids that you can go be in the world. And so you take a kid who's dressed like he looked like he grew up in 1864, send him to New York City with a little bag, and he get robbed and get back on the bus and go back home. I'm back. That world is bad out there. Well, what did you expect? This guy, he looked like Little House on the Prairie or something,
Prodigal son.
So they set you, and that's what happened with the witnesses. The witnesses don't train their children how to survive in the real world.
Yeah.
And so when they decide to leave the organization, you don't know how to choose friends. You only chose your friends on how many hours they put in field service. A good Jehovah's Witness knows if this young man right here is 13 years old and he's putting 25 hours a month, 15 magazines, that's a good young man. Well, not necessarily, but that's the criteria they would use. So that's how you would judge your friends. You pick your wife. How many hours does my wife do a month? How many magazines, how many Bibles, how many meetings does she attend? Those are the criteria you use to get your mate. Well, when you leave the religion, religion. These folks ain't going to the Kingdom Hall. They ain't hawking no Watchtower Bible and Tract Society books on the weekend. So what criteria do you use to judge them as a potential mate? You don't know. And so you just grab in, and we've seen, especially with our females, they'll leave and they'll grab the first man that come by and say, girl, you looking good, girl. And so, because in the organization, there are very few males. There are very few males who are eligible as husbands. So you have a lot of single women who they would like to get married. They can't find no brother in the hall. Man, their job, man, the neighborhood. He sound nice, he look nice, and they end up getting involved sometimes with absolute fools. And at that point, they realize, oh, I left God, and so then they come running back to the Kingdom Hall. It's messed up. You know, as I tell my wife all the time, the Watchtower gives its members a false value system. What is upside down is right up for Jehovah's Witness. What is left is right for everybody else. And so the witness is literally operating at a negative almost in every aspect of his life. Almost every aspect, he's operating in the opposite direction. Yeah. And when he has to deal with the real world, man, it just slaps him upside the head. Oh my God. It's really bad. It's really bad.
We have in Utah, they like people will get married after knowing each other like 3 dates.
Ooh.
Because if you're like if he's a return missionary, been through the temple, she's at BYU, you know, they're TBMs, they're in that like, oh, we love each other, that lust, that first few months when everything's perfect, you know, they won't even go to the toilet in your presence, and you know what I mean. And
you don't. She has makeup on and her hair is done. Like, man, she look good every morning.
And they'll go get married and have kids, and then 5 years later, one of them leaves church.
They're trying to kill each other.
And then they get divorced, and the family falls apart because their marriage was based upon the goals that were set by the church.
Yes.
Goodness.
You take the church out of it, and sometimes, unfortunately, the bottom of the marriage drops out with it, and you get that situation. But when I was a missionary,
the Jehovah's Witnesses are just like that. They get married because they both of them accept the religion.
They want sex.
Well, of course, that's it. But when you look at a situation where there's only 2 people in the congregation that you can choose from as a woman or a man, and then you look, oh, well, this is a person here that I wouldn't mind marrying because they're part of this religion, and that's all you chose them for.
Do you find,
go ahead.
Because you marry like just Jehovah's Witnesses, and because it's such a close community, do you find that when you go to other areas and you go to church, some people will be like, we're related, and you're like, what? And then they'll go through this whole thing. Well, he married her, she's his sister, and he married them, and they got married, and that's your brother's sister-in-law, and you're just like, really? Like everyone's just related.
Wow.
Now, that happens to the congregation. That happens because I happened to my congregation in Ohio, where you had this one family, and they were all married to each other's siblings and stuff. You something like that?
Yeah.
Everybody got married to somebody in the family, and so, oh, you know, sister so and so, that's so and so's sister-in-law, that's the brother. And my dad would be telling me, oh yeah, you know, that's so and so. That's her sister's married to his brother and stuff.
Yeah. Running out.
But you have polygamy, man. A man with 8 wives produce 7 kids or 6 kids, man. You're talking 25 kids. It's very likely in that close-knit society like that, man, you're gonna run across one of your cousins real quick.
Man, I interviewed a ex-polygamist, and he was talking about his grandpa had like 15 wives.
Good God Almighty.
And he was saying that his grandpa and other priesthood leaders like that, they'll know the exact number of offspring that they have, because that's like a badge of pride that they wear. And he's like, yeah, we had a family gathering not so long ago because my grandpa hit 1,000 offspring.
What?
Oh God.
Because he had 15 wives, and then all of the sons from them had like 5 or 6 wives. And so he's like great grandkids down the line now. So throughout it all, there's 1,000 of them. And you're just like, man, that's crazy.
Okay, but now let me ask you a question. So we're not talking about, they're not marrying, they're not intermarrying, they're not marrying relatives. We're not talking about that, right?
No, so it's like managing the herd. So he said the problem they have is the ecosystem, they call it, because you need DNA diversity. but you also need to be supplying the apostles with young girls, okay? Because they might be 80, they still want to be marrying 18-year-olds, okay?
Yeah.
So
You said 80? An 80 wants an 18-year-old?
yeah.
An
So
80-year-old? Oh.
yeah, so you got 80, 85-year-old apostles, and they want to keep taking wives because that's their right to keep taking wives.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they'll be marrying, like, if it's a first wife, they can get married at 15. But usually by that time they got to marry like 18-year-olds, because back in the day, not so long ago, maybe 20 years ago, they'd been marrying 14, 15-year-olds because that was before they started putting them all in prison. So now they do it by the book and do it at 18. But he was saying the problem then is you get a bunch of guys in the middle who are like 20, 30 years old who can't have a wife because all the young girls their age are being married off to the
The old
apostles.
geezers.
Yeah. And they're having like wife number 16, wife number 17. And then there's guys who are doing all they can in the church, but they can't get married because there are no wives to go around.
Jive.
Exactly. I've heard that before.
Up, man. That's messed up, man. That's
Yeah.
messed up. Oh
So
my God.
That's like the Amish. Isn't it the same thing with the Amish? They do the same thing.
Oh my God. So man, you're 26, 27 years old and nice looking sister, 23, 24, and she got married 80-year-old dude.
I said to him, like, what do you do when, like, if you got a crush on someone? Because the way that these marriages happen as well is the priest would call the girl in and say, it's time for you to get married. You're getting married to this brother. Then they'll call the brother in and say, you need another wife. You're having this sister. And then they send him away. And sometimes they get married that night, because that's the responsibility. And this is the responsibility of the brother to have like 50 kids. And then they use them kids as child labor to go work construction. And that pays for all the houses, and the church owns all the houses, because then the money goes back to the church and tithing.
The church.
And the
Are
church
you serious?
The church will have their own banking system. So it's a proper bank that they've set up, but it has all the money stays in their bank. And if say like a wife wanted to go get money out of the bank to run away, she can't do it without her husband coming with her to get the money. Or what do they want the money for? So your money is tied up, and they'll make checks out in your name and different things to the church. There's a lot of money issues that go on, because I mean, what does everyone want in this life? It's the power. It's the power of sex, the power of money, and the power to just kind of screw everyone else around you. You know what I mean?
Let me ask you this, PD. So you're talking about the church. Are we talking about the whole church, like where the headquarters is? Are we talking about each individual church is run where they take certain monies from the people that belong to that congregation?
Okay, so when I say the church, I mean the whole church.
Okay.
But that's Mormonism that I was a part of doesn't do that. These are, you're talking about the sects that have broken away and still practice polygamy, and live in their own towns and compounds, have their own police forces. And it's a bit like the whole David Koresh thing that still goes on today in Utah and Idaho and Montana, places like that. So they're still doing it.
I didn't realize there were that many splinter groups from the Mormons.
There's over 500.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's crazy. But the missionary work that we were on, this is something I wanted to bring up with you. Something I'd like to try and do is, I figured if I could get people who were already religious to come and be a Mormon, I'm already halfway there with teaching them about God and the Bible and stuff.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So I would take every Sunday we'd go to our church in the morning, and then in the afternoon we'd go to another church, another denomination, because you need to know what the enemy's planning. You got to be able to say, well, we're better than you, and everyone come in and learn with us. So we'd go to, like Pentecostal churches, we'd go to the Methodists. The Seventh-day Adventists loved us. We'd actually go around with a local pastor to all of his congregations on a Sunday afternoon, because he liked us to preach to the congregations. But we went to the Jehovah's Witnesses one time, So dressed in our suits with our tags on, our name badges on. It was like a Wednesday night or something. And we went, and oh my gosh. like I thought I went to a Methodist church and they asked me to leave as soon as I walked in.
Really?
We sat down, the pastor or whoever it was, minister came over and he said, "Look, guys, we know what you're here for. Just save us all some time and just leave." We went to the Jehovah's Witnesses and it was like being choked with honey. Everyone was so nice, but I felt like everyone had got a 6-shooter in their pocket ready to shoot me. Okay? Like the brothers came over straight away and they were like, you know, "Oh, welcome, you know,
Welcome,
it's amazing that you're here. Come on in,
Yeah.
come on in, you know. Oh, come and sit over here with this family," who were obviously the most Jehovah's Witness people that were there. Come and
Yes.
sit with them. And it was almost
You
like
sit with a regular pioneer couple.
yeah. They were like, go and sit down and sit with them. And they talked to us all throughout, telling us what was happening and everything. But not one chance did we have of talking just to anyone, you know. It was like, let's line them up, you know. You can talk to as many people as you want to, but we're gonna choose the people that you speak to.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow. Yeah.
And yeah, we didn't go back, but
And they got the chance to count time on you during the meeting.
Yeah.
They were counting time on you, man. Yeah, they wrote that down. I spent 13 minutes talking to this guy.
That's the best.
Yeah, they count time, man. Yeah, when Jehovah's Witnesses are out, man, they on the clock. That's why people tell me, don't let no witness in your house. He's on the clock, man. He at work. He's at work.
Right.
Talk
so
you to
true.
death. Talk you to death, man.
The one thing you guys have got there that is amazing is the book of reasoning.
Yes.
Because we don't have that. Okay. So
the reasoning book. You talking about the brown book? The book called The Reasoning from the Scriptures?
Yes.
Conversation stoppers.
Yeah. So
you say A, I say B.
Yeah, it's like a script. It's like what to do when a Mormon answers the door, what to say. I got a copy of that as a Mormon missionary and I loved it.
Yeah,
it was amazing. Or like, because it's got, so for anyone who doesn't know, and I'm sure you know you guys can explain it better than me, but it's a book that you carry around and it's got the answer to everything. Anything anyone could say, it has got the Watchtower's approved answer right there. And you can just pull it out and be like, read the script. You're a Mormon? Okay, let me tell you what they told me to say. You know, we don't have that. We're just riffing. We're just
you're
like
Buddhist, you're Muslim. We got you covered. We got you covered.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, awesome.
That's
that
amazing.
is so
I
true.
forgot all about that book. Yep, we sure do.
Yeah.
I think we still have our copy, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
No, it's a good one. But when it comes to the score, what do we reckon? I don't know. I think it's just that equally as
crazy, man.
Crazy.
Did
So
you give us our point? Did we get our point on that one? Did you give us a point?
I'm gonna give us a point each.
Yeah, I think so. I agree.
I think we're equally as committed. All right. Let's.
Oh, that is so crazy. That is so crazy.
Let's see. The brethren have had a special meeting, and they want to figure out. Oh, what number did we just do? We don't want the same number.
Just go ahead and spin. Go ahead and spin.
We did number 9. We did number 9.
Okay, number 9, not number 9 again.
Right. Got stuff all over me.
This is funny.
Number 7. What do we got? Number 7. The Holy Spirit has led us to purity culture. Okay, so purity culture, we're talking about, I think a little bit like what we spoke about earlier with regard to
purity culture,
OCD, on being as pure as possible, as righteous as possible, especially on the outside to everyone else. Like, and the judgment is what I'm going for. The judgment that people will put down. So in Mormonism, when investigators come to church, most of the time they don't have a suit and tie. You know, this is the first time they've ever been in a church, especially a Mormon church where everyone dresses like a lawyer. You know, and you got to wear a white shirt and tie. So most of the time they come in jeans or, you know, the best they got. But everyone kind of, I don't know, if someone comes to church on the first Sunday dressed like a Mormon, you're like, man, yeah, they got it. They got it. They're amazing. They're the best. And it might be, it might be that they're the best person, but they just they don't look right. And you're like, man, they're not going to make it. They wore jeans on their first day, or I saw them smoking in town. They're not going to make it. You know, you just write people off. Do you guys have a similar thing?
Yes. The Watchtower adopted the corporate look when they found it was very, very effective. They have publications that almost mirror what we refer to as the IBM. You know, back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, the IBM Corporation set the standard for how business people should dress, and the Watchtower adopted that. Even to this day, in certain places, you still have to wear a white shirt to give a talk. There are certain circuit assemblies over the years where the district overseer who was in charge at the time, you know, they had a little rack of shirts back there. If you came to the meeting and you had on a light sky blue, brother, we need you to put the white shirt on. So wow. I mean, they just and so the dress is very important for Jehovah's Witnesses. That's why there's no beards, no long hair, no earrings, tattoos,
no short dresses.
No short dresses for the women. The women have to be modestly dressed. The Watchtower gave an article about how the dress should be. They quoted a business consultant who mentioned 2 inches below the knees is the appropriate business dress. A lot of the elders, a lot of the Jehovah's Witness instructors, they took that as the signal. This will be the standard, sister. You're not dressed. Even though and it was cool the way they did. They quoted someone else in their magazine to make their point, and by osmosis, they know it will become viewed as law. You could not go on. Yeah, you could not go on any of the stages at the conventions if your dress was above the knee. There were brothers who would pull you off. They would just, sister, you won't be able to go on like this. Wow. And so that clean cut. I think of the Mitt Romney look. Yeah, he is the perfect example when I think of a Mormon.
Yeah, no, he is. And we'd send our children to like conventions, so they go away for the week, like a summer camp type thing. For Mormon Jesus. But when it comes to like formal dances or whenever they're dressed in their smart attire, they'd make the girls kneel down on the way in, okay? And if their dress didn't touch the floor when they knelt down, they were sent away to get changed or go home.
Yeah, I've heard
you know, the boys, if their hair touched the collar, or covered the ear, they were sent away to get a haircut or go home. Yeah. You know, and I don't think Jesus cares about that.
Yeah.
But
but you know what? Ours was even worse than that, because if you violated any of these standards and rules, you wouldn't even be given titles and positions in the congregation.
Oh yeah.
You know,
wow.
And it got to the point where even if you showed up driving a 2-door car, because when you go out in field service, you go by 4, like by 2s, and you're gonna have 4 people in the car group. So they even got scrutinized about the kind of car they drove.
Oh yeah.
You know,
you come up in a Corvette, you know. And as I tell people, and there's gonna be somebody who's gonna be hearing this, and they're gonna say, "Well, I know somebody got the Corvette," but let me help them understand the point. Jehovah's Witnesses live by 2 rules. They live by written rules that Jehovah's Witnesses have, and they live by what is known as the culture rules. And the culture rules many times are more powerful and more impacting than the written rules that you can show someone on page 13 of this book, because this is how you will be viewed by the group. You know, he's not too spiritual, you know. And that's the way, you know, the sister, look how she's dressing. So no one may come up to you and say, "Sister, your dress is too short," but you would feel it. You would feel it because you won't be invited socially. You won't be acceptable, and so you will be shown by the cold shoulder. You know, like the British, you know, stiff upper lip. You know, I mean that's the kind of stuff that you would impact people in this religion. And so these are like the cultural things that that are not written down, and everybody understands that. Everything has a culture. Everything has a culture. Yeah. And you know when you have been accepted, and you know when you have been rejected in any culture that you walk into, on a job, business, a club, or whatever, social event. You know when they ain't nobody friendly in here, you know. It don't take long for most of us to pick it up.
Did PD give us that? Did you give us that, PD?
Yeah, I gave you that point. I gave you that point.
The last one I'm gonna say is the purity culture is if you went to the movies and somebody was actually saying a curse word in the movie, the spiritual Jehovah's Witness would get up and walk out of the movie theater. That was crazy.
Tell them the rest of it. Tell them the rest of it.
What?
The rest of it is the spiritual Jehovah's Witness gets up and walks out. Now the rest of y'all is 6 or 7 of y'all left. At that point now, what do you do? What do you do? Well, of course, everybody gets up and leaves. Because anybody who stays in, you're gonna get dogged. I got up and left, brothers, but they stayed. So
right.
I think
I can't get my money back.
Yeah, I think we have a similar thing of people being
JT,
pressured.
you're having a lot of bandwidth issues. Your whole face don't change colors.
Okay.
it's the Holy Spirit.
The Holy Spirit.
Yeah. It's always the Holy Spirit.
Oh my God.
Okay, awesome.
Where are we at now?
I think we need to cherry pick a couple of these because
go ahead.
We could go all day, but people are gonna get bored of us. Okay, so I think
let's do a couple more.
I think we've covered a lot, but Armageddon, the second coming. I think we have. I've prepared something a little bit. Let me show you this.
Yeah.
This is, as far as I can tell, the Jehovah's Witness idea of the second coming.
Yep, that's it.
Okay, that's epic.
Yep.
You got guys firing guns, and you got the witnesses right here, and everyone else is just papping their pants. Okay,
yeah.
Mormon's second coming here. Okay, it's all glorious. Jesus is there for everyone. Okay, and people are gonna burn, but we don't want to talk about that. We're very passive aggressive in the Mormon religion.
Wow.
So that you will not find imagery from like the Book of Revelation with stuff like this happening in the Mormon religion.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, you'll find everyone's white. Okay, so remember that. Yeah, because everyone's going to be white in the next life. So,
okay.
I everyone,
I wasn't aware of that. I tell you, learn something every day.
Yeah, because that's the Mormon way.
That's the Mormon way. Yeah.
You'll all be the same people, but you'll all be white people. Way.
They used to teach years ago that black folks would return back to the original white color of Adam and Eve. So
So then, if everybody's gonna be white, then nobody's gonna be sunbathing.
No, it's
okay, because that's what people do now. I mean, they go to the beach to get dark, so they don't want black people around, but they go to the beach to get
no sunbathing.
You know what?
Do Mormons go to the beach to get tanned right now?
Yeah. You can do. You can take your magic underwear off for that.
Okay.
You can, but it's stupid, isn't it? All these white people through history, they got it down on anyone that's not white, but then they'll go to the beach and try and not be white as much as possible for weeks and weeks on end through the summer, and they'll be like, hey, check my tan, but they'll look down on someone else because they got it naturally.
I've always found that fascinating.
As I say, humans are amazing.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Mormons used to teach that the reason people are different colors is because all the white people were the super righteous people in the pre-earth life.
Yeah.
And all the people that aren't white were not quite as valiant in the pre-earth life, so they were cursed.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, that's...
Can I tell you the reason why my dad said that there's black people and white people?
Go for it.
When I was a kid, he said that the reason why there's black people and white people, we were getting ready to go out with some friends and they were late. And it was another black family. And my dad said the reason why there's black people and white people is because when Jesus told everybody to go down to wash their body off, the black people were late. And so when they got there, they only had enough water to wash the bottom of their feet and the bottom of their head and the back of their head.
The bottom of their feet.
That's the reason why we're black.
People said
we have white heads.
Yeah.
Our feet and the bottom and the back of our head.
I told you, man, humans, we are simply amazing creatures, man. We can come up with some stuff. We can come up with some
Right.
stuff.
That's funny.
Oh my gosh. Well, I gave it to you because your Armageddon sounds so much more lit than our Armageddon.
Oh, it's gonna be lit. That's what they
Oh
say.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
ours is gonna be lit.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
That's funny.
Let's talk about money, prosperity gospel, tithes and offerings. Okay, because I think we got you beat here. Like you're absolutely destroying us on the leaderboard 5-2, but I think we got you beat here.
Oh, there's no question. We were blown away when we talked to Dillinger. Oh my God. I mean, I just had no idea y'all guys roll in the kind of money y'all roll in, man. I mean, that's amazing.
But I may have to flip this on him. You say that you got us on tithing, right?
Yeah.
In what way?
Well, what do you we have to give? Well, it's 10% of your income standard.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's gross, not net. So you gotta do it gross. And then on top of that, you've got your fast offerings, which are for the poor. And then on top of that, you got a whole raft of other offerings that you can give, that you should give generously. And then they said we can't afford to pay cleaners for the chapels anymore. So we're going to sack all the cleaners, and all the cleaners were local members. So they sacked them all,
Lost their jobs.
and then said to the local members, you now have to come and scrub our $150 billion toilets.
That's right.
Okay. Y'all probably do got us on the tithing. But one thing I wanted to mention about our tithing, okay, we don't tithe, but people give up whole paychecks for the Watchtower.
Wow.
Like, for instance, when JT was at Bethel, he got paid $90 a month, and he did it all for free. And he was there for 6 years. Now, there's a lot of other people that's been there for 30 years plus. But when you think about husbands and wives where the wife doesn't even work and she sacrifices to do full time for Watchtower,
Yeah,
that's a whole paycheck. So if you want to just talk about dollars and cents, let's just say that wife, if she was going to be making $50,000 a year, then pretty much she gave $50,000 to the church because she didn't get it. I mean, the church didn't get it either, but look at how many people are suffering.
Well, we do a similar thing. It comes back to missionary work, I guess. So for me to be a missionary, I had to pay the church so much money every month
Oh wow.
to be a missionary. So every country has a different dollar number that they have to pay. I think it's $500 a month at the minute that missionaries have to pay to the church for their upkeep. So you're not just volunteering your time; you have to pay them $500 a month to stay there.
Oh, they got us. They got us, JT.
They got us. They got us. They got us.
But then you're encouraged. You're encouraged when you're older and your kids have grown up to go and be a couple missionary. Okay, so you'd go as a man and a wife. You'd give up your jobs and you'd go and you'd look after these younger missionaries, and you'd go knocking on doors again somewhere in the world. But to do that again, you have to pay your way. So you'd have to pay the church in order to do that. They wouldn't say, "Oh, thank you for your time. Come and we'll pay for it." You know, if you're going to go to Papua New Guinea to be a missionary, then you got to pay to be in Papua New Guinea. So
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Most churches send the missionaries and financially support them from on the back end. Y'all have it where the missionary supports themselves on the front end. Wow.
Yeah. So
I had no idea. And you're doing this for them. So in other words, you're going out and you're spending your time, you're getting rid of your job that you're getting paid to pay somebody else to do work that's going to bring somebody in that's going to in turn give them money for what they're. Oh my God.
And it's all about the money. And this is why people had such a big issue when the $150 billion figure came out in the Washington Post. Because everyone's like, we knew the church had money, but that's obscene money. And why does Jesus need all that money? Why isn't the church opening hospitals, schools, building villages in poorer countries? They don't do anything like that. And what they do, they publicize all over the place. I think JC here, Mormon is so racist still. Sad that the NAACP has co-opted as a cover for a few million in scholarships because they were pictured Yeah, the Mormon prophet went to the NAACP conference not so long ago, because they'll take a bit of that money and they'll buy publicity with it,
Publicity,
basically.
yeah.
To say we're not racist. Look, give them
See?
all these scholarships. We're now giving scholarships to black students
Yep.
all over the place.
Yeah.
And we're giving 0.001% of our income to do that. So it didn't even scratch the surface.
No.
Also, Gladys
I
Knight. Also,
understand
Gladys
that.
Knight became a Mormon too, didn't she? Gladys Knight.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a number of prominent African Americans who have become part of the Mormon faith. One of the things that I remember reading is that because of the slowing growth of the Mormon denomination, and Dillinger mentioned this in the podcast with us, they have expanded into other countries, and so their growth is mainly coming out of the poorer countries, and of course they're not reciprocating backwards with funding and helping these poor countries in view of the fact that they have the resources. It's one thing if a church says we ain't got no money, well then you can't get blood from a turnip, but to have a huge financial nest egg and don't help your own church in other countries, that raises that should, as a critical thinker, that should raise some serious questions. But religion is emotional.
They've thought of this because Mormonism is full of lawyers and accountants. Okay, so what they've done is maybe 10, 20 years ago, when this trend was starting to appear in Western society with the internet and everything, converts were starting to flatline, if you know what I mean. There was no real growth. But there is a lot of growth in poorer countries in South America and Africa. That's where the real boom time is right now for Mormonism. So what they did is they created something called the Perpetual Education Fund. And what they've styled it as is a way for guys and girls from poorer countries to be able to come to the United States and gain a college education and then go back so that they can benefit their village, their town in Africa and help progress it. But what actually happens with the money there is the church gives the loan to the person as a, here you go, we're doing you a favor, but it's still a loan. Okay. So when the person wouldn't usually have been able to get that loan from a US bank, the church is saying, here it is. Okay. And members will pay money into the Perpetual Education Fund in order to give those loans. So the loan isn't coming from the church. The loan is coming from the members who are paying these African people to come to the United States. They've still got to pay the loan back with interest. Okay. And then they're sent back. But what they're sent back as is a high earner in Africa because they've got a US degree, college education from the United States. So what then that then does is mean that the more people that the church can put through the Perpetual Education Fund, which is making them money anyway in interest, they then increase the tithing receipts that are coming from those poorer areas because they're sending college educated people back to those areas. So then it means that the Mormons in those areas are getting the better jobs and the church will be getting increased tithing receipts in order to sustain the church in that area.
Wow.
Yeah, I have to say that is the mistake that the Watchtower made. The Watchtower, because of their disdain for higher education, it has led to Jehovah's Witnesses having the lowest educational level of most major denominations, which translates also into the lowest level of economically. The Pew Foundation did a research a few years ago, and Jehovah's Witnesses, as a religious denomination, they rank at the very bottom. And it's not because there are people who are witnesses who are not intelligent, but because the religion has focused so much on not going to college. Therefore, it's not producing people with higher degrees, which typically translates into higher salaries. They are now left with a very low education, low economic group of people who now find themselves struggling in difficult economic times because the lower paying jobs that witnesses many times have to get, they don't pay enough. So now they don't have the time to go out and knock on doors because now they have to work longer hours or work two jobs to make the same amount of money they could have made with one good paying job if they had the education. So for the Jehovah's Witness, it has been literally an utter failure by discouraging for the last 20, 30, 35 years, 40 years, not to get any type of higher education. You now have an entire group of people who are at the bottom of the scale. And this is a fact. People don't like it, but this is when the Pew Foundation put this number, I was surprised. I personally was surprised it was that low. And it's actually in the bottom. I said, good gracious. At the very bottom.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of sad.
Well, they figured it out, because the more they educate them, like you say, the more money comes back. So church sponsored BYU, the universities in Hawaii, Idaho, and Salt Lake. Yeah, get them in. If you're a baptized member, then you get discount. Get in there. If you're a return missionary, you get a bit more discount. And because it all comes back in tithing afterwards.
Right.
What do you guys do about inheritance? Does the church encourage people to give the inheritance to the church and not the children, like we do?
Oh my goodness, is that what you guys do? Well, it depends.
I guess the kicker is really, this is just a joke, but the kicker is, see, y'all have inheritance to give. See, at least y'all have inheritance to give.
Well, put it this way: I think it was every October or November.
Yeah,
they had this article that would come out in the Watchtower, encouraging people to give their assets. And I think if because you have this group of people who don't have an education and they don't really understand what to do with the little assets that they do have, they may not realize that they need to make sure that their spouse is taken care of. Because this happened in my mom and dad's congregation. There's a family that my mom knew, and in another congregation in another area, the woman called my mom's best friend and said, when her husband died, the Watchtower wanted her to vacate the premises of her house, because this article that comes out every year encouraging people to give their assets to the Watchtower, they filled the paperwork out wrong, not realizing that the wife needed a place to stay after the husband died, or vice versa. Okay. So then what ended up happening was they ended up letting the wife stay in the house until after she died. Then they would take possession of the property. But what they don't realize is, as a caretaker dealing with my own parents, I realized that when my mother and father, when my mom got sick, we ended up having to sell their home. And then, of course, they ended up moving in with us. So some people are selling homes and they're living off of that money. So that if that woman got sick, that was not her house to sell to get anything for. So a lot of these people are giving up. And I don't know if this is happening, how many times this is happening, but I can only imagine. Yeah. Because when they begin to believe that the end of the world is near, the Watchtower is asking for these assets, and then they're like, we do have something. Well, how should we divvy it up? And they don't realize that the little bit that they do have, they really can't give to the Watchtower, and that's the kind of stuff that's actually happening.
Yeah. Well, we used to have something called the United Order, and the early saints tried to do it, but they weren't righteous enough to do it. But basically that means that everything everyone has, they give to the church, everything, your paycheck, everything. And then the church doles it out as they see fit. So if you've got a house, you give it to the church. If it's got too many bedrooms, it goes to a bigger family, and you go into a smaller house. So it's that kind of thing that everyone is provided for by the whole, and no one is rich, no one is poor. But if you work more and you would be rich if you didn't give it to the church, it's kind of a bad deal. But if you're going to be poor, then it's a good deal, because you get the rich person's money. So one day it'll be the United Order again, and that's the way it'll work. The church will just have everything. But
I
for
think
now,
y'all won.
Yeah, but
y'all got that. Y'all
got us beat.
Y'all got that one.
do you
Y'all
do
got
you
that
Women don't have nothing to leave.
do you have to do a yearly statement with the local elder to say how much, to make sure you've been given the right amount?
No.
Okay, so we have just quickly tithe and settlement.
Oh yeah, y'all got it down.
Yeah,
Y'all got that.
print out a statement of all your offerings that year. You have to go
Oh no,
sit
y'all got
down.
it down,
Nope.
Chief. Y'all got it down. Y'all got
He'll
it.
look,
Y'all got it.
he'll look you in the eye and he'll say, "Have you paid a full tithe this year?" And the
Oh
Spirit will
Lord.
tell him if you lie. And
Good
then
grief.
and if you haven't, then where's your temple recommend? Give it back.
Ooh. Yeah.
So the
Yeah, I mean,
Amazing.
we know people who belong to churches where you have to submit your W-2. Well, in the United States, they're called W-2s, which
Okay,
is your
yeah.
tax. So they can look at your taxes and see how much you're supposed to be contributing to the church.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's pretty bad. So 5-3. I think what we got left, really, we've done changing doctrines where we did gaslighting, harmful doctrines, and the bite model. Which one would you? The bite model is a big one because we could go for hours on the bite model.
Yeah.
Because
Oh yeah.
I think
But I think they both. I think
harmful
they definitely
doctrines.
both. They both fit it. There's no question
I
about
think,
that.
yeah, I don't think we need to look at that. I think what we've discussed.
Yeah.
If anyone doesn't know what the bite model is, Google it. It's all about controlling both
Yeah.
the physical,
Mhm.
spiritual, mental welfare of a person.
Yeah.
I think we both get a point for that. I'll pop those on. But harmful doctrines, this will be our last one. You guys can go first.
I think the harmful doctrine is when the watchtower tries to get into people's personal life a little too much. Two quick ones. When the watchtower tries to get into the medical aspect of Jehovah's Witnesses' lives, they have issued edicts that certain medical procedures were against God. So if you want to please God, don't do it. Then they come back and they change it. And now all the people who have died because of it, nobody wants to be responsible. Everybody wants to play dumb. The second one is people's intimate life. The watchtower has got into people's bedrooms, literally in between the sheets, as to what type of activities that a married couple can engage in the privacy of their room. They took positions on that. They said these were actual grounds for divorce if one spouse said they didn't want to. And so then they came back. People got divorced on the grounds of sexual activity within their own privacy of their bedroom. And they were told by the Jehovah's Witnesses, you are free to remarry. These people remarried. Then they came back and they changed it. And they're like, hold on a second. We got a little problem here. So,
Right.
so when they changed it, of course, what that means is, according to their own teachings now, people got unscriptural divorces and remarried.
Ooh.
So what the watchtowers did is they put a footnote down in the bottom of the study article, and it basically said this: if you know somebody did that, don't bother them, leave them alone, don't worry about it. It's okay, don't worry. That's what they did. I mean, it's amazing. So
Go ahead. And the other thing would be the child pedophilia, the harmful practice of not turning in pedophiles, and how these children, had to suffer. And then the other one would be the shun. I would call it extreme shunning, especially when you shun somebody because they wake up and say, "I don't believe this is the truth," and now you lose everybody in your family to the point where that one man committed suicide because that's why he left. So those
harmful
are
doctrines.
harmful doctrines.
Yeah, I think you got us on the shunning definitely, because over on this side of the table, like, they'll just passive aggressive. It's like they will cut you out and stop inviting you to things, but they will not talk to you. If they see you on the street, they'll put the smile on, they'll talk to you and say they're worried about you and everything. But you guys are like, no, you're dead to me.
You did.
Yeah.
You did.
Can't go to funerals. This one girl, her father died, and they had buried the father, and she didn't even know he was dead.
They should saw it in the paper.
Oh my gosh.
It happens all the time.
Notice in the paper. Yeah.
But
right.
I think I'd put up against your, I guess, the medical things and the sex. We had a sex thing. They tried to ban oral sex and then realized that they couldn't because everyone was like,
no, it's the same here.
So they kind of backpedaled that.
But
they
did here too.
Polygamy. You get 80, as I said, 80-year-old guys marrying 14-year-old girls. Joseph Smith himself had like 40 wives and was marrying 14-year-old girls. And it's not just the marrying, okay, and the physical kind of side of that, which is just disgusting anyway. But the mental torture that he put these people through. Like he'd say, I think he said to just a young girl, you know, you've got 24 hours to tell me if you're going to marry me, or an angel with a drawn sword or something like that is going to kill me. And so you're putting on this child, like the prophet is going to die if you don't do this.
Yeah.
This
Wow.
disgusting thing. And I think that as a harmful doctrine has carried forwards in the fact that that established a very patriarchal order. And that if you imagine you get one guy with 15 wives, that guy could have gone to the celestial kingdom in heaven with 1 or 2 wives, etc. But he's going with 15, and none of those women can go there without him, but he can go without any of them. Like on the second coming, on the morning of the first resurrection, okay, in the temple, you get a new name, okay? Everyone gets a new name, and you're covenanted not to reveal it apart from in the temple. But on the morning of the first resurrection, the brother will be resurrected first from the grave, and then he will choose which of his wives he wants to call forwards. Because when you get married in the temple, you learn your wife's new name so that you can call her forwards, but she doesn't learn your name because she's no need to know it. So the brother comes first, and then he'll be like, well, wife number 8, you were good at the dishes, so come on down.
Yeah.
You know?
So even going to heaven, the woman gets cut short.
Yeah, she can't get there without him. Like
I told you, man. I told you, the girl on my job. It looks like a man's hand all up inside of that stuff.
If you don't have a celestial marriage, so we know people who like part member families where the husband's not a member but the wife is. So
really?
she will go and be someone's servant in the afterlife.
Oh, God.
Oh, you gotta be kidding.
No, because she didn't get a celestial marriage.
Y'all, I tell you.
So
that is crazy.
Yeah.
So women just never can't get a break.
No. And a brother cannot get married in this life and can you know, still get wives in the next life. But you know, a sister, if she's lucky, a brother will choose her, but if not, she'll go be someone's servant.
She get cut short. Boy, I tell you.
But even in the new system, we want to do that. Well, I don't even know what we never really delved into what kind of roles we were going to have. And I guess it was going to be the same thing that we would have gotten in this system. Women would still be like on the bottom rung.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, women are always going to be on the bottom rung as long as men. You know, if a man can make up the rules, I mean, realistically, people don't give up power. Power has to be taken. So if you're in charge and you got the power, just
microphone.
You know, you're just not gonna. People are just not gonna give it up. You know, I mean, it's
right.
Well, I think a point each for that, just because a lot of ours, yes, there were a lot of harmful issues way back when, but you guys are still making medical decisions and different things that are hurting people today and tomorrow. You know, a lot of ours, it's very spiritual issues. It's like a spiritual assassination, and they'll take you down, and yeah, it's not very nice.
Well, you've definitely helped me to appreciate that being a Jehovah's Witness is not the worst religion in the world.
This has been very insightful. I mean, very insightful.
Oh dear. Well, hey, if anyone is on the YouTube stream, well, I'm going to close the vote now, having listened to all of this. If anyone wants to vote, now's the last chance to get your vote in for that bonus point. I mean, it's only a bonus point, so the Jehovah's Witnesses have won on this occasion, and I'm quite happy to give it to them. But
Shay, this is one win you don't really want, but unfortunately,
yeah. Well, fortunately, we're all out of it. So, oh my gosh, it was 53% to Jehovah's Witnesses, 47 to the Mormons, but someone has just voted for the Mormons and made it 50-50.
That's about right.
So
yeah, they both got some very, very interesting beliefs.
Yeah. So that will have finished then 8-6 to the Jehovah's Witnesses. Congratulations. You guys have been amazing. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much for having us.
Yeah.
No, thanks for your time as well. This went much longer than I anticipated, but I think it was all killer, no filler. You know, it was all fantastic stuff. So
Absolutely.
It was very informative. I got this.
yeah, no worries. I think yeah, it's great just to get your take on it, because you end up in an echo chamber sometimes of we're all Mormon or we're all ex-Mormon, but it's funny to listen to other people, especially you, Lady Cee, just be like, "You serious?"
I think, you know, in having discussions, I think you're probably like the third person I've talked to about the Mormon religion, and I think you really kind of like put the icing on the cake.
Oh, thank you.
With just some of the things that you were saying. I was like, oh my God, you gotta be kidding me. I couldn't do that.
No,
It's just
it's
because I mean, even with Jehovah's Witnesses going out in service, if I knew that I made my 10 hours for the month, if I was just a regular publisher, then I knew I got 2 weeks to kind of like do nothing or whatever. If I didn't want to do something, or if I just really realized that, hey, I don't did my part. But
yeah.
to be thinking about all that stuff, baptizing somebody, and I would be like looking like 6 months in advance, thinking about how many people we got to dip under the water for this person, that person, and that would just consume me.
Well, you got to come up with the names most of the time as well, because you can't just baptize like anyone. They've got something called Temple File, so there's stuff there if you just want to go and do it, but they encourage you to do the genealogical research and the hours that it takes to put that together. And then again, the church making money off the back of the members, they got something called indexing. So the church has got a website, a business called ancestry.com. Okay,
Yeah, is
where
that them?
where people can pay for a membership in order to go on and look at all the records and do their research. And when people do research, I think there must be some disclaimer or something somewhere, because the church can use that research to baptize people if there's a family member somewhere along the line. But what they do is they get the members to do what's called indexing, where every year new records are released from the historical records, but they're like 100 years old, so they're all handwritten in difficult to read script. But they'll say to the members, we want everyone to try and index so many records this week. So they get millions of members to go online to their system, and it will bring up the picture of the name, and then it wants the member to type the name. But what the member doesn't realize is they're being used as free labor, because that name goes into the ancestry.com kind of website, and that's how they build the website. So then they get non-paying Mormons to come and say, hey, look, we've got all this that is already transcribed for you, but it's been transcribed by Mormons for free. And you imagine a company like 23andMe or someone
Yeah.
like that, if they wanted to have it transcribed, they'd have to pay people to come and sit in front of a computer and go through it all. And the Mormons get the members to do it.
Well, let me check my Ancestry account, because you're saying I'm paying a Mormon if I'm paying that.
Yeah, Mormons get it for free, but usually it's a subscription.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
That's eye-opening. That's an eye-opening situation there, because I'm into genealogy as well.
yeah.
And
Ancestry is really good, but yeah, it's built on the back of free labor.
I had no idea.
Yeah, they have the. I realized years ago they had the largest genealogical records in the world.
Yeah, that's why.
That's why, and that is why they have the free labor to build the database.
Yeah.
Right. Your microphone ended up off.
Yeah. Well,
it's not your microphone. Well, we're done now, but your microphone is no longer hooked in to the system. You gotta you gotta do it from the panel at the bottom.
Okay.
It's coming from your laptop.
It's good.
Okay,
So
I'm good.
it's okay. Well,
okay.
I just think it's amazing that we've had this talk, and you just find so much kinship. Even when you were Jehovah's Witnesses and I was a Mormon, we'd have probably like crossed the road not to talk to one another. But now that we're survivors of the same high demand, like religion issue, then, you know, I'd take you out for a meal and pay. It's that sort of black and white switch that these old men will try and pit us against one another, whereas actually we've all got a lot of common ground. And yeah, I'd count you. If someone said to me JT and Lady Cee, I'd be like, yeah, no, awesome people, good people. Whereas yeah, it's such a change once we release ourselves from those rules and regulations. We can all actually be people and friends. So thank you so much for coming on and talking to me. And thanks to everyone that's been here as well. We've had a great chat going, and I think a lot of people have enjoyed it. We've had a good game. So you guys, thank you. Thanks everyone, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate being here.
No, thank you.
All right.
See everyone.
Bye-bye.